Today we are interviewing the CEO and founder of Hydroviv, Eric Roy. My name is Suresh Jasti.
And my name is Raul Kavoru.
So Mr. Roy, could you explain exactly what Hydroviv is?
Yeah, so Hydroviv is pretty simple. We're basically a water filter company that makes water filters that are optimized for each customer's water. So the filter that we sell in New York City is different than the filter we sell in Washington, D.C. Basically, we just make the filter match the water.
Yeah. So what were your company roots and how did they help you get into the field of water purification?
Well, I come from research and development. So after I finished my PhD, I was part of a spin-out company that developed stuff for the military and for EPA. And basically, I just got a little bit frustrated with the research aspect of it because I wanted to make products that, helped real people.
Yeah.
And that's Hydroviv. So really, we're implementing those very, very highly technical concepts into these filters that we're selling and people are using in their homes. So that was kind of the goal, and we achieved it.
So you're an innovator and an entrepreneur, as seen by this company itself. But what step do you think is more important?
What do you mean?
Like, do you place the concept over the parts or the marketing and management?
Oh, you need both. They're equally important because, in research and development, you spend a lot of times working on really cool ideas, but if there's no market for it, then it's not a company. You're just doing research. Both those things are fantastic, but, you really can't have one without the other. And then on the other hand, if you're just putting these huge marketing efforts into, products that are not innovative, then really it's almost like you're lying to customers. So, if you're starting an innovative company, it's really, really important that you have both sides of the coin.
Yep.
So I know like the process must have been time consuming creating your filter, but what exactly was your process in creating it? Like what exactly was your plans?
Well, when creating the filter, really where we started was with the lead disaster that happened in Flint, where, citywide there were very, very high lead concentrations, and really just, my experience said that the filters that were out there weren't going to last as long as, they were rated to. So what we started doing is just really building water filters that were specifically matched for Flint's water.
Yeah.
And the company kind of came from there. So that's really how we got started. We started really with one special filter, and then, one filter becomes two filters, becomes four filters, and, fast forward 2 years, and, we can cover most of the United States. About 95% of the United States we can make custom filters for.
So, what are the main differences between Hydroviv filters and regular water filters technically, like in the machinery?
Well, in the way that they work, really, we use cartridges just like other people do. The thing that makes us different is the type of thing that we put in the cartridges. Yeah. Most people, they mass produce one formulation, and then they sell it to everyone in the United States. Whereas what we do is we just balance the different types of filtration media in each cartridge so that matches the water better.
So it's all about specifying for your target market?
It's all about specifying for the customer's needs. Okay. So if you lump that into market, then yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I know Hydroviv is one of the few companies that treat chromium-6. So what exactly, how hard is it for a competitor to enter the market? What are the pros and cons?
Well, it all comes down to what they want to do. We use materials that other people could buy. If other companies wanted to make a filter for chromium-6, they could, but the way that they're set up is that they would mass produce that filter overseas.
Yeah.
And by the time it and then they'd sell the same filter to everyone in the United States. So, if they wanted to make a chromium-6 water filter, they could. All of that stuff is out there, so they can build that, but they would still just be they still wouldn't really know how to optimize it for each customer.
Yeah, but in this, it's you have all these different states with all these different problems, right? One could have a high lead capacity, another a high chromium-6 capacity. So
absolutely.
In one sentence, what would you say is Hydroviv's vision?
To make water filters match each customer's water.
Okay, and then what would you say about third world countries where it's kind of like a lump of everything?
Yeah, for that's a very good question, and that's something that we're looking at longer term.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you nailed it. We don't know what's in the third world countries' water a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So until you know that information, it's really hard to build a filter for it.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening right now is there's a lot of water filter companies that are just kind of selling a lot of generic filters over there,
Right.
and there's really no accountability as to whether or not they actually work. They just know that they're selling them. So, kind of our core values as a company is we want to make sure the water filter actually works before we're willing to sell it. But,
Yeah.
we definitely are looking overseas. We're talking to potential partners overseas who can get water samples and get them tested and things like that. The
Mm-hmm.
difference between the third world countries and the US is just that, we have data in the United
Yeah.
States. We know what's in our water, whereas places, in China or India or other places, they just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So on like the topic of chromium six in third world countries, what
Mm-hmm.
exactly like should we do to like, spread awareness about like chromium six like harmful effects like?
Yeah, in our community.
Yeah, I mean, in the community, it's really just talking about. I mean, there are scientists that chromium 6 is not a mystery anymore. I mean, we've known how toxic chromium 6 is for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So really, when you're talking about how to get the message out, I it I think it needs to be grassroots. You just start talking about it, and then eventually you find someone who, maybe they're a reporter, maybe they're a lawyer, a public health official,
Yeah.
and you just slowly build that momentum. So then, once you have that big microphone, then you're able to really spread that message really wherever you want.
Yeah. So for me, I'm also designing my own water purification system with
Mm-hmm.
tea leaves. So it's like a completely different approach to it. But
Mm-hmm.
what do you think is more important right now? Getting the water filtration or sensing the water filtration that the water has actually contaminated?
So, which technology are you using to sense to
Oh,
do the sensing? Because the key
well,
thing is, go ahead.
well, what I'm doing is I'm taking distilled water and I'm
Mm-hmm.
taking copper 2 and nickel 2 and all these ions, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just putting it into the distilled water as a solution. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
basically putting my tea in, just stirring it. And it like so far we've already found out that copper does work. It purifies copper very, very well. We
Mm-hmm.
used just a cheap copper test kit to see that. So, but copper and nickel are already proven. What I'm trying to do is compare the effects of it and see if it can do phosphate and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in that, what's more important, detecting that a certain water has copper in it, or that a certain type of sorbent can actually purify it?
Well, it's both, right? Because you need to make sure that it's working at the relevant concentrations.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, the cheap test kits that are out on the market. They're not sent. They're really just detecting stuff at usually very, very high concentrations. Whereas when you engage a water quality test lab, they're measuring at much, much lower concentrations.
Right.
Copper isn't all that toxic at the concentrations that it's typically found
Yeah.
in the United States for drinking water. So, what we're really looking at Hydroviv anyway is we're looking at those really toxic things. So things like
Mm-hmm.
lead and chromium 6, arsenic, things like that. And in order to actually detect those chemicals to see whether or not your filter's working, you really should be using a water quality test lab. The kits that you get at the big box stores they just don't work.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of money testing it,
Mm-hmm.
but at least it's done right. That's the advice I'd give you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I know like water filtration can be done in like several ways, such as reverse osmosis and
Mm-hmm.
ion exchange process. So
Mm-hmm.
how exactly would you say Hydroviv's technology is different from other water filters such as Brita or Culligan?
Mm-hmm. So reverse osmosis, we do not do reverse osmosis. So that's really easy to make us different. Again, the difference between us and stuff that the other brands that you mentioned, those brands, they make a single formulation and they sell it across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an example. So a lot of water filters are really designed for chlorine-based water systems.
Right.
So the assumption is that you add chlorine to the water to kill the bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
That's true in a lot of places, but take Washington, D.C., for example, where Hydroviv's located. We actually use a chemical called chloramine instead of chlorine for about 11 months out of the year. And chloramine is, you filter it differently than you would chlorine. So, I mean, that's just that's one big difference. And I think if you call and ask, some of the other brands that you reference, that they would tell you, look, we don't claim to remove chloramine from the water.
Yeah.
So it's really, they're mass producing a single filter, and they're selling it everywhere in the United States.
Yeah, and it's too broad, especially to meet the needs of everyone.
Exactly, and that's the key thing. I mean, it solves a single problem broadly, but if you really want to dig into the details of each person's water, there's just no such thing as a one-size-fits-all filter.
Mm-hmm. And exactly how big a problem is, in America, how big a problem is water purification? Like, is our water really that contaminated?
It can be. There's places all over. What happened in Flint with lead is a great example. Mm-hmm. Portland, Oregon has very, very high lead levels right now in the water. Basically, any city that's an old city probably has either lead pipes in the ground, or the homes are constructed with plumbing that has, lead-based solder in it. Yeah. So this is true in New York City, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C. had a Flint-type episode back in the early 2000s. So, when you're talking about lead, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Chromium-6, there's been a little bit more media attention recently about chromium-6.
And there was a movie, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
There was a movie, right?
Yeah, it was called Erin Brockovich.
Right. So that was a while ago. That was in, I think, the mid-90s. Erin Brockovich came out. But there was a new series of media reports on chromium-6 talking about how widespread the contamination is in the United States. Yeah. Chromium-6 is not regulated. So, the municipalities, the way that it's regulated is it's lumped into a total chromium measurement in most cases, and chromium-3 is not toxic. So, you're lumping in something that's very, very toxic with something that's not toxic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I looked on your website, and I know you actually have, a team of members designing the water filters. So yep. How exactly did you, establish your team? What were you looking for, quality-wise in your team members?
Mm-hmm. Well, the team members, really, we're looking at, what they can bring to the table. So, we're not just scientists at Hydroviv. We do have scientists, and one of the key things at Hydroviv is that we want to communicate what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So we have a blog, so we hire a lot of scientists, and they do write on these blogs. Wendy is a neuroscientist, Stephanie is a biomedical engineer, mm-hmm. And they write about water quality issues as it pertains to other stuff. Yeah. We want to make sure that, our blog content is, it's factual, it's credible, it's things like that, because, as you guys know, anyone can make a website, right? And it's very hard for the public to really understand what's true and what's not. So that's why we really try and go above and beyond with the people that we have working at Hydroviv, and what they're writing on. We want everything to be very credible.
Right. So obviously marketing is a huge part, as I said before. So
yep.
You market through your blog and through your website, but do you have any other channels that you use to spread the word about your filters and chromium-6?
Yeah, so we also do advertising as well. We advertise on, just like most companies do, we advertise on Google, we advertise on Facebook. It's really any way that you can get stuff out there. We've bought ad space on, a pharmacy bag, like for a local Walgreens. Yeah. There anywhere you can get your message out is fair game. Yeah. We talk to people, we talk to media, you guys are essentially part of, it's all about getting the word out there. You guys are part of our advertising efforts. That's the reality of it, right? Mm-hmm. Just word of mouth, when you talk about stuff, even on Instagram, people will share it with their friends, they'll talk about it, and you'll generate a buzz. Yeah. We view marketing very much as, having a conversation with our customers. We actually interviewed our first 500 customers face-to-face to see what they like, what they didn't like, why they thought certain things were important. And then in our marketing campaigns, we try and do that digitally. We try to do the exact same thing that we did face-to-face, only do it digitally.
Yeah.
So, currently, what are you working on to, develop your water filter?
We're always just testing. We're looking right now. A big part of our effort on the filtration side, it's the technology's locked down. It's proven, all that other stuff. So now it's really turning into a marketing experiment. Like, how do we communicate with people? How do we get the word out? How do we get people to understand the difference between very credible articles and and our competition, not our competition, but there are a lot of people out there that say things that aren't true on the internet. And how do you get people to trust you and not them? So I mean, we're always working on different ways to filter the water better. That's kind of ongoing R&D, but a lot of our effort right now is how do you have these conversations with people when you're not face to face with them?
Yeah. Well, since you're in marketing, how did you even get to that stage through your research, right? So we went through the step of getting your research and then going to marketing. So how did you get how did you originally get into this whole research thing? And then also after you find a really good group of people that want to buy from you, especially in like third world countries, what is your next step after that?
Sure. So, I mean, I think a marketing expert would laugh if you told them that I was in marketing. I am very much a scientist, so yeah. I'm very much still learning. So when we're talking about research, are you talking about why I did my PhD? How are you talking about the science research? I mean, really, I just did my undergraduate degree in chemistry, and then I went on to grad school and just kind of started studying a number of different things, and I got into research. We looked at filtration media, we looked at membranes, we looked at a lot of different things. There are a lot of curiosities. So, we just kind of kept going down that path. Part of a spin-out company.
Was there anything in high school that influenced you to go to that path? Or was it just
in high school, I wanted to be a doctor. So when I went to college, when I was, I was pre-med for my first 3 years of college. And then, I didn't really know what research was until I did it when I was an undergrad. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. Because, if you think about it, research, it's the only time where when you're doing an experiment and you see the result, you are the first person on Earth to know that. It's kind of a weird thing to think about. It's like no one else on Earth knows what you just discovered.
Yeah.
So when you're in the lab and you're doing that every day, it's like this is pretty fun. So I pretty much abandoned my med school plans and went and got my PhD instead and kind of continued in research for a while.
Yeah. So who exactly would you say your biggest influence is that led you to go in the water filtration business?
Yeah.
So my undergraduate advisor, one of them, he was an aquatic chemist. So we did a lot of research out on lakes, which, in the summer's pretty great. Like a lot of our friends were doing research in labs and I'm out on a boat. So I would say that was really pretty fun. So I would say that, his name's Whitney King. He's a professor at Colby College. He was huge. He was instrumental in getting me really, really kind of looking at water from a water quality perspective.
Yeah.
From a filtration perspective is a little bit different. So one aspect of my PhD was developing materials, developing sorbents, modifying the surface of those materials and things like that. And that was, one of my PhD advisors. Another one of my PhD advisors was also an aquatic chemist. So I would say, all of those people all together, really kind of help build me.
So, so this is the last question, but what would you recommend that the next generation of entrepreneurs and researchers and doctors do to pursue their passions as high schoolers?
Yeah, like us, for example.
So for you guys, I mean, what I would say is learn everything you can. That's just the thing. And, it's not, I wouldn't decide what you're going to work on today. I just really would. I would learn about so many different things.
Definitely.
Talk to your friends' parents, see what they do. Take as many different types of classes as you can. And then once you find something you love, that's when it's great, right? Because once you get into research, once you get into a career, you're going to be doing that a lot. I mean, when you do something a lot, you're going to get good at it. But the key thing is you need to enjoy doing it or you're not going to do it a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I would say. I would say don't focus yet. I would say stay very, very broad. Okay. Math, science, everything. Just take all the different classes you can. Just try to make yourself as broad as possible. I would say another thing for entrepreneurs is do exactly what you guys are doing. You guys are doing it. You guys aren't like researching entrepreneur. I mean, you guys are doing it right now. You guys are doing all the right things. You're figuring out, how to track people down, like cold call people, like, like you're scoring interviews, right? So, I mean, you guys are already doing it.
Thank you.
I'd like to turn the camera around and, kind of ask you guys the same questions. What do you need from, the previous generation of entrepreneurs to get you guys rolling?
Well, I mean,
because as far as I'm concerned, you guys are doing it already.
It's exactly as you said. Like, the previous generation already has 20 years more experience than us.
Yeah.
So with that, we just want to take that experience, bring it into our own heads and our hearts as well, and kind of learn it while broadcasting the information as well for anyone else who might be interested.
Yeah, as you said, learn everything. So you try to learn everything from them, what they would say to us. So.
Yeah, and from the beginning, we haven't just had one type of business that we've interviewed, right? We've had an IT company, a building company, houses and real estate. We've had an entrepreneur startup program. We've had a fitness company. So we've had everything, and now we have a water filtration company. So we're trying to get it all.
And then the other thing, I'm not sure you guys even realize this. You guys are already doing the hard part. Communication is the hard part, right? Mm-hmm. There are a lot of brilliant scientists and brilliant researchers out there that are doing really, really great work, but they're having a very hard time broadcasting that to anyone in a way that they can understand it. So, I mean, what you guys are doing right now is absolutely incredible. You're doing all the right things. You're doing it. So, that's the advice I'd give you. I mean, you guys, you're interviewing people. That's fantastic. You're learning how to communicate. You're broad. You're working on everything. So, bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So today we interviewed Mr. Eric Roy from Hydroviv. Once again, thank you for accepting our interview.
Thank you.
And
of course.
We hope that we'll see you again on this.
Yeah.